So MYOB Advanced 2018. MYOB have delivered quite a comprehensive solution here. Today we're going to go into what more it offers, what's the impact. We're going to look at the workspaces and the navigation. What do you need to do to prepare so that you can see what the screens are going to be different. And also you should, by now, if you're upgrading this month in August, this week, you should have received a letter, an email from MYOB. Today's agenda. First off, I'm going to go over the navigation, then the financials. Then we're going to have a Q&A session. And then we're going to go into Easy Collect, followed by another Q&A session. So I'm going to go over to MYOB Advanced now. And what's going to happen when you get your, when you upgrade in the next, when you log in over the next couple of days. So on that first login, you'll have the option to switch to the modern UI. Then I'll go over how to use the modern UI, how to configure it. I'll go over search list, I'll go over the universal search, and I'll go over the help. I'm going to switch to MYOB Advanced now. And later this week, for about 50% of you, when you log in the morning, you'll get this. The upgrades are going to occur over 3 nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. And then your users will be able to just log in with your normal login. By default, they'll stay on the classic user interface. But you will have the option to switch to the modern UI. So it's very straightforward. So, and this will lessen the impact for your users. So most of the screens have not been, have not changed. There may be an extra field or two here on some screens, but most of them haven't changed. So if we switch to the modern UI now, and it happens like this. So the main difference is this concept of the workspaces on the left-hand side, and then the search list. To make a permanent switch to the modern UI, you change your user profile. We just make that switch down the bottom here, and we save that. Now I'll be using the modern UI, but you can switch back at any time. So let's refresh here. Now, if we look at something that's fairly common, like sales orders or receivables or finance, you'll see a new concept called a workspace. The workspace is very easy to use. It's just point and click. So here, this is our modern workspace here. The workspace consists of what we call tiles up the top here. You can see these. And then we have all our different entry forms set up in different categories here. So to open the sales order screen, I could just click on sales orders. And this will bring up my list of sales orders. In this case, I have set up the filter to just show you the open sales orders by default. Rather than seeing all your sales orders, you just see the open. And these filters I'll go into a little bit later. Going back to the workspace again, if I click on the tile, it's going to do something similar, but it'll go directly to the form. And the form looks the same as previously. Okay. Data entry and the normal entry facilities on the forms are the same. Going back to the menus again. The menus are quite flexible. If you wish, you can collapse the menu like that, just by collapsing it to the left or expanding it like that. You can also collapse it even further and just have the menu up the top here. So it's easy to navigate and use your workspace here. I'll go back to this again. As I mentioned before, we have the tiles up here, and then we have the menu entries, and we have the categories here. These categories, transactions, profiles, processes, inquiries, print forms, reports, preferences, and other, are predefined. If you need to, when you're in edit mode, you can change these categories. You still have access to your favorites, which is over here. So you can set up your favorites, and to make a new item a favorite, all you do is you have a little star there, and I just click on that, and now that's a favorite. Or I can make one of these a favorite, and now they're up here in the favorites. Some other new area is called data views. So on the data views, by default, you'll get your dashboards in there. Then you can put in whatever else you need to put into there. If you have already been changing your menus around, then if you've been adding new inquiries, adding new reports, then you will need to add these to the workspaces when you convert over to the workspaces. To edit or change the workspaces, it's simply a matter of going down the bottom here and saying edit menu. Now you're in edit menu mode. Everything that already has a tick here will show in your quick menu. So if I take that off and take invoicing off there, and then go back to my menu, then those are gone now. I've only got sales orders there. If I go back, edit the menu, then I can restore those. I can add new tiles, and I can change the tiles as well. Changing the tiles lets me change the icon, the title, the form that I'm looking for, and also parameters. So if you have a report that you use quite often and you want the parameters predefined, you can have them in there as well. The menus you can move around, and you can add new items. So if I want receivables, I just click and drag it and move it there. If I want to change the order of things here, I can just click and drag and move it around. If I want to change the order of the tiles, again, you can just click and drag and move it around. Just remember, clicking and dragging, the MYOB have taken the same approach. You can click and drag things around as long as you're in the menu mode, in the edit mode. Up the top here, you can add your own workspaces. You can add your own menu items, and you can add your own tiles. And we'll just slip out of there. The menus that appear is obviously going to be governed, just like it is currently, by the security access. You'll see down the bottom here, I have more items. So I have a lot of other workspaces that I haven't included. But to include it, all I've got to do is pin it. To exclude it, all I have to do is unpin it. So straightforward, but you still have access to it. If I want to bring up my marketing, then I have my marketing tile there. One of the things I think people will will use is start to use the quick menu and the full menu. So currently on this sales order quick menu, I've got quite a lot of things on here. Most users will not need as much, so you can trim that down by using the edit menu that I showed you, but you can always return to your full menu to see everything that's available to you. So what I'm going to move on to now is the next area, which is what happens when we go into a particular transaction screen, for instance. I think I've mentioned this to a lot of people. I mentioned in the previous overview that we have what they call these lists here now. So that by default for about 150 screens is your first entry point for a screen. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can extend it. Even if I look at this particular list, you'll see there's lots and lots of fields which aren't shown. By default, it comes with a fairly one-page wide view of your data. From there, then you can start doing other things in here. This is the same inquiry screen, but they've made it a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit more features in there. So if we want to, we can create what's called a quick filter just by dropping it and putting it in there. So up here, then we can just say, I want to see my open documents, for instance. Okay, you have your filter button over here that's moved a little bit, and then once you like something, you can save it there. You have your normal search cell up in the top right-hand corner. So if I want to look up Digi, then it'll just find Digi there. So same as usual. These lists are also, you can combine actions into the list. So you can select multiple records and prepare the invoice or open the order or reopen the order. So you have multiple actions, and if need be, you can do what's called mass updates as well. From here, it's the same as what you're used to previously. I'm going to go back to my data views for the moment. In fact, I'll go back to this and talk about dashboards for a few minutes. So with the dashboards, they've always been quite powerful and you can make a lot of use of them, but they've added some new functionality, especially this concept of a parameter up here where I can say search for a salesperson, and then all the widgets that incorporate that particular parameter will then just show you the information for that particular salesperson. So basically any attribute that you want to be able to search on, you can incorporate into here. This could be something like company, it could be something like branch, it could be salesperson, it could be the financial period, it could be a customer. So you can incorporate that into your dashboards there as a parameter that you want to change on the fly as you're reviewing this. With the other area where they've changed it a bit is in this pivot tables. So if you're currently using pivot tables, you know they're quite powerful, and these are the inbuilt pivot tables within MYOB Advanced. They need to have a generic inquiry behind them, but with the pivot tables, they've incorporated these things called data parts. So instead of having to, in the inquiry, build complexity into the inquiry, to say, find the month that a particular transaction relates to, or the week that a transaction relates to. You can use the date and just say, I want to have a view of that date in terms of a month, or a week, or a quarter, or a day, or even an hour or a minute. So they've incorporated that into there to make it easier so that you don't have to incorporate that into the generic inquiries. If I look at this, a little bit in the background of the pivot table, you'll see how this is incorporated. So when I'm looking at a date, I'm just using the normal document date, but I've said I want to round it to the month. Okay, and then you also have this thing called a date part as well. So that lets us use just the date field and then incorporate that into the pivot tables in a very straightforward manner. You can also use that for sub-accounts, and I know most of you have got sub-accounts, so you can incorporate that into your pivot table. So if you have sub-accounts for region, or for state, or product category, or salesperson, or something like that, you can incorporate that more easily into your analysis, and this makes everything quite a bit more easy for you. Going back to my screens here again, I'm going to move on to the user help. So user help has been represented. It's a good way of putting it. So if I press on user help now, it doesn't just give me the context sensitive help that it used to in the past. It also gives you all the procedures associated with the screen that you're on at the moment, to create a sales order, to process returns, to create a shipment for an order. It gives you the concepts, and it gives you the forms. I've been doing ERP for a few decades now, and this sort of approach here is what people have been asking for a long time. Then on top of that, you have the Educational Resource Centre here. So you can go into the Education Resources here, and it presents you with a whole lot of guides here. There's the interface guide that you can explore, the user guide. They're all as per usual. You have a thing here called quick guides. So you can go into here and you're presented with all these different quick guides which have been published. So there's lots of useful things in here, such as allocating items during sales order entry. Goes into quite a lot of detail of this area that is not too well known, but it's quite powerful there. If I go back a little bit further, you also have the release notes. So once you upgrade to 2018, you can go into here and you can find the release notes that go into all the different areas that we have here as well. Okay, very good. So that's the navigation part of the system. I've been over this, but we're going to publish this webinar, and later on I'll show you where we'll publish this webinar. So what I'm going to go into now is the finance area. And we're going to discuss the financial changes that have come in the product. In particular, I'm going to talk about companies and branches. I'm going to talk about tax periods by company and being able to close tax periods. I'm going to talk about reclassifications and doing split reclassifications, accounts receivable statements, which affects most of you. and how to incorporate that. I'm going to talk about accounts payable and retainage and pay to suppliers, and I'm going to talk about AR outgoing cash approvals. And back to here, and first of all, GST, and we're all affected by this. Okay, so with the 2018 release, what they've done is you can now set up different tax periods by different companies. So now, if you are running multiple companies, multiple legal entities, today they need to be all basically running the same tax period type, either monthly or quarterly there. But with the 2018 release, you can now set that up so that you can run it by company. If I look at that one, or if I look at this one here, this one's set up quarterly and the others are set up monthly. So that's going to impact quite a few of you. Now you'll be able to have your quarterly companies and your monthly companies, and you'll be able to close them independently of each other. The concept of branches, and I'll bring this back up. And companies, I want to go over this again. This is better. Okay, so previously 2018, you could have multiple companies, and you needed to change those companies. You needed to go up to the top right-hand corner to change those companies, and then you could have multiple branches underneath each of those companies, and each of those branches was a legal entity. Now, this concept of companies has been renamed as a tenant. And then underneath that, you could have as many companies as you wish, different legal entities. Then within each of those, you could have branches. Now, those branches can be legal entities, or what they call balancing branches, or they could be non-balancing branches. So how is this going to affect most of you? Most of you, it'll be transparent in terms of this change. The branches will just automatically change over to companies. Okay. If you do have consolidation branches, then it will set up something like the company 1 over here with the branch 1 and the branch 2 underneath it. But for most of you, it will be a straight, you'll just get a list of companies now. You'll also have the branches there, which are the same as the companies. Just going back to MYOB Advanced, and if I go up to my universal search there, I'll have my company. This is the one I want, companies. And here's my companies here. And in this case, it's without branches. So for most of you, that's what will happen for you. They'll be without branches underneath the companies. But you could have a situation where you have a company here and branches not requiring balancing. So the way you'd use this particular structure is if you had multiple branches around Australia, they're all part of the same legal entity, but those branches were self-sufficient in their own right. They might have their own manager in those branches, they do their own buying, they do their own selling. And so what you want to do is you want to operate it, you want to run them as a separate division, but they're all still part of the one legal entity. I'm going to go now to what they call reclassifications and the new features that have been incorporated into reclassifying items. So previously, when you reclassified a transaction, you had to reclassify the entire journal, but now, or the entire journal row. But now I can do a partial reclassification. So now I can just go into here and I can say I want to split a particular transaction. I've got $1,200 here. It's all in one sub-account. So now I can just go into here and say split. I can say where I want it to go, put in the amount, and all you do then is process, and now I've reclassified that particular item there now. If I go into the journal, you'll see here I've reclassified $400. I've taken it out of journal 6560 and it's now in 6569. Just moving on now to payables, we have a new feature in the preferences. It's not going to impact you too much unless you start to bring on new companies or something like that. But we have this thing called activate migration mode. That allows us to bring in, this impacts accounts payable and accounts receivable. It allows us to bring in transactions without impacting the general ledger, without impacting inventory. So it'll be great for when you're taking on new items. We also have this new facility in accounts payable and accounts receivable, which is called Retainage. So now we can start using Retainage. So here, in this case for accounts payable, you may decide I want to retain a certain percentage from a particular transaction. Okay, so first thing you need to do is decide what you want to do on the Retainage settings. Here, I've got it clicked because I want to do some Retainage on the taxes as well. Then on the supplier, in terms of setting this up for the supplier, and in this case, I'll look at this, the first one up here, and I've told it that I want to, for this supplier, I want to retain 10%. I also have some general ledger accounts that need to be set up as part of this. Then, when I'm doing an accounts payable transaction for this particular supplier, we can perform Retainage then. Just to do a very simple transaction here. And example, and say I want to do, it's $1,000. And when I release this, what's going to happen is that there's a certain amount retained here. In this case, it's just 10%. That's what I set up to do here. Now, after this has been released, you've paid it. First of all, I'll pay it. I'll just do a quick payment here. And what's going to happen, it's not going to pay the full amount, which was the $1,000 plus the 10% GST. It's going to pay the difference. And then when I release, that's been done there. We've paid the $970, and so there's still a balance left on that. Sometime later, you'll get to the point where you want to release the balance of that one. They've come through, it's either a warranty condition or for whatever reason. you can then just release that retainage. That could be a month later, it could be 2 weeks later, it could be 3 months later. And you just release the retainage. It allows you to release 100% or 50% of it, and you just release, and it will create a new bill, and it relates to that particular bill, and then you can pay the balance of that. Within accounts payable, there is also that we've introduced the concept of pay to suppliers. So if I look at this particular supplier here, which is RTAC Networks, what I've done here is I've set up a pay to supplier. That means I can raise a purchase order against the child supplier. I can receipt against the child supplier, but the accounts payable will be paid to the head office. And I think if you're dealing with people like BHP, the head office is in Adelaide, but you may be treating the different sites, the BHP sites or something like that, as separate customers. What I'm going to go to now is accounts receivable statements. There's been quite a few changes in this particular area. So I'll go over to receivables, and we'll look at our statement cycles here. So here, there's quite a few changes here. Now we've got different schedule types here. End of financial period, end of month. So, and then what we have here is we can use our financial periods for the aging. So rather than setting up 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and be limited to just to those sort of 30, 60, 90 days, now we can do it based on the financial periods, which is common in Australia. Then we can do our aging based on the due date or the document date. And for some of you, I think my experience is 50% of Australian companies do it document date, 50% do it due date. Previously, it was all due date available. Then within the receivables, we've got some new features here. So if I go into a customer, we can do statements on demand straight off the customer now. So if I go into bartender, I can go to the action and I can generate a statement on demand. So I'll do it for the 13th, and I'm just generating a statement for bartender based on their statement cycle, but as at the 13th. Then I can go into my customer statement history, and if I just resort this, you'll see here I've got a statement on demand from the 13th, the 12th, and another one based on the 5th, the 12th, and the 18th. And then you can reprint these as you need to. Okay. So that covers the financial side of things and the major changes that we want to go there. There is one other area I want to touch on here, and it's for approvals of outgoing monies. This applies both to accounts payable and accounts receivable. Previously, say on accounts payable, there is an approval process which allows you to approve bills for payment. So this is just a procedural approval. And for those of you who are familiar with the workflow approvals, if you have access to this, then you can do the approvals. Workflow approvals is rules-based approvals, and I'll walk you through an example here where I'm doing an approval for a cash refund. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'll enter a payment here, but it's going to be for a customer refund. So choose customer refund here. Hang on, just go back one. I think I should be right. And so I'm giving a customer refund of $100. I chose the wrong one. Choose that one again. That one's already been paid. So I'll just quickly set up a new credit memo here. Used up all their credit, so I'll just disable that. This time I've got it. And now I'll raise a customer refund. Choose this. And when I take it off hold, it's going to come up for pending approval. So this is specifically designed to help you and assist you with approving outgoing monies. And it's workflow based, so behind the scenes, what I have is an approval rule. And in the approval rule, you can decide the rules associated with the approvals, who does the approval, that sort of thing. So this area has been changed and simplified quite a bit. So we have the customer, in this case, I set up a very simple approval rule. I just said the type is customer refund. Anything over $100 needs to be approved by whoever the employees you have. You can make these as simple or as complex as you wish. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over. I'm going to just, first of all, just take some questions for a few minutes. So if you've got any questions, if you put them into the chat, could you please put them in there for us? And I'm just going to go read through these questions. The first question was, if I add a new tile, will all users see the tile? Yes, when you change the workspaces, these changes to the workspaces are common for everybody. Okay. If you have any further questions, please put them in. There is a new facility here as well. When you are in a particular screen, it doesn't matter which screen you're in. Mike, the previous question led me to this. When you make changes to the columns on a screen, you can then, after you've made that particular change, then you can decide who you want to share that with. So here you've got this facility to share that column configuration. That lets you basically set it up for lots and lots of users. You can share it with all the users, or you can share it with select users. And so you can decide who you want to share those changes with. Before I hand it over to Arjun, I just want to show you one other thing here on my PowerPoint slide. And so this is all about further information. So within our leverage support, the leverage freshdesk.com, what we've set up in our frequently asked questions is a set of solutions. So now you've got the videos. There's 12 videos there in relation to the MYOB upgrade. We have the release notes there as well. And today's webinar will be put up onto here, and the previous webinar is up there as well. As well as that, their MYOB have started a MYOB Academy, which has got videos on the workspace. It's got videos on the sales and purchasing process. And so that will be a valuable resource if you need to go into any further detail. But during this week, for those of you that will be upgrading, somebody will be contacting you today from Leverage. You should have received an email from MYOB already, but somebody will contact you today in terms of, okay, who do you contact once you do get the new MYOB 2018? So, and you can ask further questions then as well, but somebody will be contacting you today.